Hey guys, welcome back. So today's part 3 on this 2015 Yamaha TTR125 LE. This one I found on Facebook Marketplace. It was listed for $625, and the bike itself was in very good condition, but the engine, not so much. The piston disintegrated and took out the cylinder and the connecting rod. So that was disclosed in the listing, and the person selling it had taken the top end of the engine apart. So part 1 was spent fully taking the engine apart and assessing any additional damage. And unfortunately, I found some. The balancer was bent, the shift shaft bent, and the exhaust valve was bent. Not to mention the crankcase was cracked. So yeah, not good, but I did order the parts to fix this, and part 2 was spent getting these cases together and getting some of the stuff on the outer parts of the engine. I kind of ran out of parts and ran out of time. So today, my hope is to finish this engine up. We'll get it back on the bike and hopefully do a first start on this and get it outside and go for a ride. So let me get you set up a little bit better and get going on this. We'll just start on the flywheel side. This was already assembled in part 2, but I did not have the gasket to finish it up. So we get the gasket on and move on to the other side. There are 2 bolts that are longer. I think one goes there, the other there, and then the rest of them are a little smaller. Gonna start with the oil pump. Got a new gasket on, everything's been degreased. And make sure you put that gasket on the right way. Technically it'll fit either way, but if you put it on the wrong way, it's gonna not seal and work properly. Probably should have started with this on this side. I need to install a stud which supports the shift shaft and the linkage over to the shift star. So I've got that chilling in the freezer. I'm going to heat this up a bit and hopefully it drops right in. Hopefully this shift shaft goes in a little easier than the other one came out. Perfect. This is the drive gear for the oil pump. Just goes on the crankshaft right up against the ball bearing, like that. And this is the drive gear, which drives the clutch basket. And it is not going on. Might have to tap that carefully in place. And hopefully it goes on. There we go. Gonna put a wrench on the flywheel nut to hold things still while I torque down on the drive gear. Don't forget to put the ball in. Instructions say to use a little bit of Yamaha bond on these bolts. Now, two of them are longer. The longer ones go where the locating pins are. And then there's one bolt that's a little different than the others. That one goes center bottom. I think that's just about it for the bottom end. I'm going to leave the starter motor out for now. We'll put that in later. But I can add the sprocket for the chain. So I'll put that in. And there's also a bolt right here that I put in part 2. It is not the proper length. I have the right bolt now, so we'll get that fixed as well. Getting the piston ready for installation, and I already put some of the rings on, the expander ring as well as the oil scraper. But before doing that, I did check the gap between the piston and the cylinder and checked the end gaps on the rings, and they were dead on, so no issues there. The expander ring, the gap is set at 6, and each of the rails above and below the expander are offset. One's at 5 o'clock, the other one's at 7 o'clock. And the scraper ring, that will be positioned at about 10 o'clock. And the compression ring's the only one left, and that gap will be at 2 o'clock. So I've already put the compression ring in the cylinder, and the minimum size should be 6 thousandths. So we'll check that real quick. A 6 fits fine, and the max is 12 thousandths. And that doesn't fit. So we are within spec. So let's get this last ring installed and get the piston on the connecting rod. And just make sure the markings on the rings are installed up. The expander ring, there's no up or down, so that doesn't matter, but the scraper ring and the compression ring, they are marked. You want to make sure that those marks are facing up. I've got this rag here to catch this circlip in case it gets away. I don't want it falling in the engine. There we go. Not too much left other than getting the head installed, but before I can do that, I need to get the valves squared away. I already lapped and installed a new intake valve, so that is good to go. Need to do the same for the exhaust, get the cam installed, and this should be ready to bolt down. I think that'll do. One quick check is just to drop the valve in, then try to spin it. And it doesn't spin. So it's making fairly good contact, at least good enough to create some friction. So I think we'll be good. Anyway, I do have a new valve stem seal. So let's get the old one out, put the new one in. And just take note, the spring does not go on either way. The side that is bunched up more goes down. It's going to be nearly impossible to show you what's going on here, but the idea is to get the keepers on the end of the valve stem. One side of the keeper is wide and the other is narrow. The narrow end goes down, and the idea is you need to get it to catch on that groove on both sides like that, and that holds the valve in place. So I'm going to use a little bit of grease to help stick it in place, and then we'll take the tension off and see if it stays. It's right there. That might be it. Probably a little bit overkill, but I don't think you can have enough. Anyway, as far as getting this rocker in, it's a little bit of a puzzle. You can't just push it in. You kind of got to angle it, tilt it, go really far in, and actually the other rocker's in the way. So, yeah, it's an odd design. Let me see if I can get this back out. All right, now I'm holding the other rocker up. Let's try this again. Maybe. I ended up having to drive those studs down further. Initially, I had stopped right when it was at the same level as the aluminum, but my mistake became pretty apparent when I tried to insert this retainer and it wouldn't go in properly. So anyway, those are all set. I think we're ready to get the cam in. These head bolts get torqued to 16 foot-pounds, but I just noticed this stud right here, it looks like it's broken, and that's for the exhaust, so that's not a good thing. If I'd noticed that sooner, I would have tried removing that before getting to the point where I'm at now. Anyway, I'm going to torque this down. I'll probably hold off on putting the timing chain on and see if I can't get this stud out. I'm bringing it up halfway first. There's just enough thread to kind of double nut it, but I don't have too many threads on this outer bolt, so not holding my breath, but let's try the easy thing first. No, there's not enough threads there. I'm thinking there might be some red Loctite on there, so I'm going to heat this up quite a bit, see if it releases. Nope, that's not going to work. There's not enough threads, and that outer nut is just stripping out. So I'm going to try to weld it on and give it another go. It's nothing like coming to the home stretch and realizing you got a problem, but thankfully got that stud out. So I do need to order up a new stud. Not a big deal. I'm going to proceed, just get the engine timed, set the valves, and get everything onto the frame and ready to go. And once I get that stud, we'll finish it up. It's hard to see, but there is a line right there on the flywheel that lines up to the arrow right there. And if you look at the cam, there's a line right there that needs to line up with this point right here, which it does. So we are in time. I'm going to torque this down. We'll add the tensioner, rotate the engine and just make sure things are good. It's always a good idea to double check this. The way it works is that the spring will push this out as the chain stretches, but it shouldn't go back in unless you crank it in like I'm doing now. So this seems to work, and it's supposed to lock in place like that for installation. Perfect. We're still on time, and I was able to turn the engine over without any interference from the valves. So I think we're good as far as timing goes. Thought I was home free after getting the stud removed, but yeah, not so fast. I went to install this new plug I got. It's an NGK CR7HSA. And what I found is that it just drops in the hole. There's absolutely no thread engagement. So double checked a few parts sites. I looked at the operator's manual, the service manual, and everything agrees this is the correct part for this engine, but yet it doesn't fit. So I have to assume someone stripped this out and they tapped it to the next size, which is a 12 millimeter 1.25. And this is just an adapter from my compression kit. I actually don't have any 12 millimeter plugs, but this one threads right in, and thankfully it tightens up. So I don't think we're going to have an issue there, but I'm got to put the brakes on reassembling this until I get a plug in there and see that it tightens down and that the plug does not interfere with the operation of the valves. I don't think there's much point in continuing. I also found this washer right here, and I almost didn't see it because it blends in perfectly, but I noticed something was moving around, and to my surprise that came out. So someone may have been using that as a spacer. I'm not sure how good that would have worked, but I'm going to hold on to that until I get the new plug. We'll try fitting it, turning the engine over, and see if it's gonna work. The new plug showed up today and wasn't packaged very well, but it did make it in one piece. So this is the DR8HS, and just want to do a few quick checks. First, the reach of the plug should be the same at 12.7 millimeters, and they do seem to be matched, so I think we're good there. And the gap should be a little bit less than 30 thousandths of an inch, which it is. So let's get this in the engine. And I'm just going to do it finger tight for now. Rotate the engine. Make sure nothing hangs up. Right now we're at top dead center. So a quarter turn to 9 o'clock will be the end of the combustion stroke. So both valves are still closed. And now from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock, the exhaust valve will open for the exhaust stroke. No issues there. And now the intake will open from 6 to 3 o'clock, and that is the larger valve. That's fine, and now we're on the compression stroke. So both valves are closed, and I do feel compression. So I think we're okay. So I'm going to tighten this plug down. A new plug of this size, NGK says a half turn the first time installing it. And then after that, if you're just reinstalling a used plug, it's just finger tight and then turn 30 degrees. NGK also has a torque spec on a new 12 millimeter plug, and the minimum they say to torque it to is about 130 inch-pounds. Yamaha says to torque this plug to about 112 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to push my luck. And I guess I'm going to stop at whichever comes first, either a half turn or the wrench clicks. And hopefully it doesn't strip out. I'm usually not nervous about installing plugs. But this one does not feel like it's tightening up. Not at all. Should I keep going? Gonna set this down to 60 inch-pounds. Do another half turn. Okay. Did make it to 60. Bring it up to 80. Made it to 80. Let's try 112. Perfect. I'm going to do the same test. We're at top dead center. Rotate the engine to 9 o'clock, which will be the beginning of the exhaust stroke. So right now the exhaust valve is opening. And now it's closing. And from 6 o'clock to 3 o'clock is the intake valve. And we made it to the compression stroke. I think we're good. Got the engine set to top dead center. And according to Yamaha, this intake valve should be set between 3 thousandths and about 4.5 thousandths of an inch. So I'm going to set it to 4 thousandths, maybe a little over. Since these are new valves, they're going to wear in during the break-in period, and that clearance is going to disappear. So that feels pretty good at 4. Let's see if a 5 fits. And it does not. So, yeah, I think that's good. Let's tighten that one down. And the exhaust valve should be roughly between 4 and 5.5 thousandths. The numbers are actually a little bit odd because they're converted from Newton meters. So the actual converted amount should be 3.9 thousandths of an inch to 5.5. So I'm going to aim, in this case, for 5. It actually feels like we're already there. Let's double check the 6. And the 6 does not fit. I think we're good. I rotated the engine, double checked the valve clearance, and everything is dead on. So the covers can be put on. The top end is done. And for the most part, the engine is done. And I'm still waiting on the stud, so we'll get that on later when it arrives. I want to install the starter. And probably the only other thing worth mentioning is that I did put some oil in the engine, about 800 milliliters. This engine takes 1,000, so I do need to top it off before starting it. But what I wanted to double check was that the oil pump was priming. I should have put some oil in the pump before installing it, and I didn't want to start it dry. So the way you can prime the system on this is just by removing this bolt here on the head and then rotate the flywheel counterclockwise until the oil starts coming out. So that thankfully worked out. We have oil pressure and everything seems to be fine. So yeah, let's get this closed up and put it on the bike. So close. This head, it's not going to work. When rotating the engine over, I thought I heard compression leaking around the threads of the spark plug, so I sprayed a bit of soapy water, and sure enough, a ton of bubbles were coming out. So I took the plug out, torqued it back down with this washer, and it was absolutely no better. So I connected the leak down tester and started to apply pressure, and at first, things seemed good. But the more pressure I add, the more apparent the problem became. There is a big air leak, and I can actually feel the air hitting me on the face. There is a significant leak coming from that spark plug hole. So yeah, that is no good. Has to be replaced. So I'm going to pause it. You've already seen how to uninstall and install a head. I'm going to get either a new one or a used one, and we'll pick up in a second where I left off, except this time without a leak. Thought I'd turn the camera on real quick. The new head is on the left. I got this one from eBay. Technically, it's not new. It is used. It's from a 2012 TTR, but it is the exact part number that I need. And this one comes with the two studs and the correct spark plug, a CR7 HSA, which is the 10 millimeter plug. And I've already checked out the threads. They are nice and clean. So I don't think we're going to have any issues with this one. So I'm going to pause it here. I'm going to do essentially what I did to that head to this one. I'm going to move the new valves over, clean everything up, lap it in, set the clearance, the timing, bolt it on, and we'll pick up where we left off with the bad head. Got the engine back together, I've got the timing set and the valve clearance, and it's ready more or less to drop back on the bike. Before I do that, I'm going to check the leak down. Last time when I applied some pressure to the cylinder, it wasn't even registering on this gauge here, which measures the leak down. So ideally it would be in the green, the lower the better. So let's see where this one comes in at. All right, let's give this a try. I've got the engine at top dead center, and the way this works is that I apply pressure into the cylinder. The gauge on the left measures how much pressure I'm putting in, and the gauge on the right measures the leak down. Now, all engines leak. They leak past the rings, past the valves. It's just a matter of how much leakage is in the engine. And according to this gauge, you can have up to 40%. That's considered low, as in pretty good. So most small engines that I've tested, they're around 20 to 40% leak down. Of course, this one's freshly rebuilt, so I'm hoping to get lower than 20. But the last time I tested this with the old head, this needle wasn't moving at all. The leak down was so significant. So let's bring the pressure up and see how we do. So things are looking pretty good. We're already at 40%. Now we're at 100 psi input. And according to this, we've got 5% leak down. So, yeah, this engine should run pretty well. Let's get it on the bike. All right, let's get the clutch cable hooked up. And we'll put that bolt in. It goes to 86 inch-pounds, but I need a little bit of Yamaha bond on there. Perfect. All right, it's the moment of truth. I'm not going to put the plastics of the tank on, and the chain's not on for that matter either, but everything else is done. I've filled up the carb, I double-checked the oil, it is full, and the air cleaner is present and clean. So let's try starting it. Turn the choke on. Nice. Almost. Sounds good though. I was a little nervous about this build. I spent a lot of time and money to rebuild that engine. I have not rebuilt one of these engines before, so I would say it paid off because it started right up and the engine sounds great. So we are almost there. I mean, obviously I got to put the plastics on and the chain and we'll be done, but there is a slight run issue. It's not idling too well. You know, potentially I need to swap out that jetting. This exhaust is not the one that came on the bike, and right now I believe the stock jets are in there. But I don't want to make any changes yet, so let's get it restarted and see if we can get it to idle any better. So yeah, I think it's actually running lean. There's a lot of puffing coming from the exhaust. So I'm going to pause it here, and I'm going to swap out the jets. This main jet's a 102.5. It's the next size up. I believe the Pilot is the same size, so potentially that needs to go up as well. But for now, I'm just going to swap the two jets, and we'll try it again. So this is the main jet right here on the bottom. So we'll start by swapping that out. And I'll swap out the Pilot jet as well. I think the kit came with the same Pilot jet, so this probably won't make a difference, but you never know. This Pilot jet could be a little bit clogged. Okay. All right, that should do it. Just put the bowl back on. Give this another try. That's all it was the jetting. The 102.5 main jet made all the difference. It's now idling absolutely perfect. So I say we finish this thing up. Let's get the chain on, get the plastics on, and get it outside. You want to make sure the opening on this master link faces opposite the direction of travel. In this case, the wheel is going to spin counterclockwise moving forward. So the chain's going to move that way. So we should install it like that. A little loose. There should only be about 1.5 inches of travel, and yeah, it's off the scale. So let's tighten that up a bit. So I do have a few generators to test today, but I think I'm going to start with something a little bit more fun. I've already warmed the engine up, and I have taken it out on a few light rides just to help the top end break in. I did end up switching the jetting around again. Although fixing or swapping that main jet out helped with the idling, it still wouldn't come off idle very well. It was very cold-blooded, even after letting it warm up for 5 or 10 minutes. So I bumped the pilot up to a 17.5, and that helped a bit. So I brought the main up to a 105, and those two adjustments combined has really made a big difference. So it's running quite a bit better, and I think it's broken in enough that I can open it up a bit and see what it can do. Okay, let's give this a go. For such a little engine, it's really surprising. No problems getting up to speed. It's driving really well. Try to drive quietly through here. I'm sure my neighbors aren't going to like this. Gonna have to find a better place to go for a ride. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It's driving quite well. It accelerates well, has no issues getting up to speed. So, as far as the financials go, well, that's another story. I started off spending $625 on a bike with a broken engine that otherwise was in pretty good shape. By the end of part one, I thought I could rebuild this engine for about $900. So that left plenty of meat on the bone as far as turning a profit goes. And it wasn't until I did the initial parts order that I realized we had a more serious problem with the old crankcase. There was a crack in the main oil gallery, and if that didn't hold pressure, then all that time and money spent rebuilding this engine would have been for nothing. So I bit the bullet. I bought a new crankcase, and that kind of sealed the deal as far as turning a profit on this. At that point, I was at the break even, and it got only worse when I went to finish this up and found the stripped out spark plugs. So yeah, all in, I am definitely underwater on this repair. I would say by at least $400 or $500, and that's not counting the pipe that I threw on there. Would I do it again? Absolutely. I learned a lot, including maybe not to buy one so blown up. That said, the skills I learned rebuilding this, they can be applied to any dirt bike, motorcycle, or quad. So that is invaluable. And in the end, I have a fun bike, a fun toy to play with that I don't plan on selling, at least not for a while. So I'm going to get my money's worth out of it in enjoyment. And maybe in 10, 20 years when I sell it, I'll have gotten my money's worth at that point. So I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching. Yeah, it's in neutral, so you just turn that to on, and then to start it, it's the gray button, like that. Want you to sit on the bike, put the kickstand up. So for now, we're going to stay in first gear. I just want you to get used to the clutch and shifting and braking and all that. And if things get a little crazy, hold the clutch down or the brake, it'll stall the engine, as long as you're not throttling it. If you throttle it, you could just go pop a wheelie. All right, you're in first. I was gonna say this is his first time, but he did try it once before. So I'm keeping him limited to first gear for now. I want him to get used to the controls, especially the clutch and the brakes. Of course, he goes right for the hill. And through the garden. Slow down. Let's see if he can stop and hit the clutch. Very good. You remembered the clutch. See, can you put it in neutral? Slowly lift up on the clutch. Nope. You could be in second or third, so just click it down a couple clicks. All right, you're in first. Now up half. There you go. Try lifting the clutch up. All right, you're in neutral. So I want you to... Oh, what happened? Oh, okay, did I? I don't remember that. I was going to say I want you to try a few starts and stops. I want to make sure you use the clutch okay and you don't stall the engine. He's getting a little daring. right, that was good. So I'll let you just ride around a bit. Try to stay off the hill for now. And just, I want you to start and stop and just get used to, you know, the brakes, the clutch. Back brake is right there. Yeah, down is the back brake on. You want to try that a few times? Getting used to that clutch.